The biggest problem leaders have is they think they shouldn't have problems.
How did you turn out from adversity to being a victor?
My life is what you call transmutation or sublimation, taking something that is not so good and turning into something incredible. The gift of suffering can be shifted into blessings and beautiful things and beautiful feelings. Humans will change for two reasons. They either change for pain or they change for pleasure. There is no right way. There's so many ways. Your way is the way. No, I'm sorry that you've been programmed in a world that people told you were missing, you were broken, you didn't have the answers.
What was that moment of switch? Welcome to External Leadership Podcast. My name is Dagmara Astwerk and I am your host. And today I'm really grateful and honored to have a very special guest, Nick Santonastasso. A person that embodies everything is possible. Entrepreneur and author of a book, From Victim to Victor. A keynote speaker, and someone who has an extremely inspiring story. Someone who has been born with Hanhart syndrome and had expectations of only 30% of chance of life and turned that adversity into a life's purpose and mission, helping others to overcome challenges, be resilient, and build peak performance. And I can't wait for that conversation, and I'm truly honored to have you, Nick, here with us.
Thank you so much. Great intro. I'm glad. I love it.
I made it.
No, this is beautiful. First challenge is over.
Yeah, I was preparing for being here and I was thinking I have to pitch myself because, a couple of years back, and I think I told you when we met, I watched your video in the YouTube, right? Your story, of course, which we're going to unpack, and it's so inspiring. And I was even sharing that with my kids and I said, look what's possible, There is no limit when you really aspire for something. And here we are in Dubai, sitting together. So it's a great honor to have you
Full
here.
circle. Yeah, I'm glad to unpack. And for those that are listening, I think if their heart is open and their mind is open and their soul is open, like you had mentioned, there will be something that's invoked and some more awareness gained in the human experience. So I'm really excited.
Exactly. So Nick, I think everybody is interested in your story, and I would love that you walk us through, how did you turn out from adversity to being a victor, right? From this victim to victor that you write also in your book.
Yeah, of course. And so for those that don't know me, in 1996, my parents went in for a late ultrasound and they sat them down and they pulled the baby up on the screen and suddenly started freaking out. Everybody was like, wow, there's something really, really wrong. And my parents asked the doctors, tell us, please. And they said, well, from the looks of it, it doesn't look like your baby's limbs are being developed. It looks like he's missing his arms, his legs. And they classify me, as you mentioned, with what they call Hanhart syndrome, which either leaves the babies with undeveloped limbs or undeveloped organs. And so at the time of my birth in 1996, I was the 12th baby in medical history that they've ever seen this happen to. And out of the 12, 8 of those babies passed away due to undeveloped organs. And so they gave my parents a 30% chance. They said he's got about a 30% chance to live. They told them not to go forth with the pregnancy, or if you have it, give them away. All this wasn't a very bright period for them. And they decided to drown out all that noise and go forth with having me. And luckily they did, because I survived and I'm here. And the only thing that was affected were my limbs. And so when I was born, they did tests on my organs and my organs came back 100% healthy. And so the unicorn was born. And I think, we can unpack specific moments of childhood, but ultimately my life is what you call transmutation or sublimation. And in a more simpler way, and those are the terms that mean taking something that is not so good and turning into something incredible. And I think every single person listening right now has the opportunity to transmute. The gift of suffering can be shifted into blessings and beautiful things and beautiful feelings. And everybody listening is able to acquire that tool, and we can unpack that here today.
Yeah, I really love your intro. How do you position that? Creating gifts, right? So what were these moments, right? I mean, you mentioned that I'm sure in your journey there have been many of those moments that were kind of compounding itself to who you are today.
Yeah.
So what were a couple of them that you would like to actually share?
Yeah, I think what's really important is people understanding that they are a product of their environment, and you only know what you know. And oftentimes you were, in the most direct way, you were brought into this world by someone who was unconscious, that taught unconscious things, and then you were unconscious, and then we lived life on autopilot. I say that in the most loving way because you only know what you know, and between the ages of 0 and 8 or 7, most of our model of the world is created because we're suggestible. You come into this new world and your parents say, don't do that, so you don't do that. And your parents say, don't cry, and you don't cry. And they say, we don't have a lot of money. You start to believe we don't have have a lot of money. And so your environment really cultivates your beliefs when you're a young boy or a young girl. And that's why I mentioned that you can have all your arms and all your legs, yet still be handicapped and crippled by your upbringing. All of us have disabilities, you just can't see them. All of us have limiting stories and limiting beliefs. And so for me, the unique way that my parents raised me was that they cultivated an environment that allowed me to fail. You know, imagine being the parents of a little boy with no legs, one arm, and having the insight or the awareness to say, okay, we're going to verbally help him, but if we physically do everything for him, he's going to get smacked in the face by reality at an early age. And so my parents, not like when I'm a baby, right? But when I got to a certain point, you know, cognitive ability where they would put my clothes in front of me and they would just say, figure it out. You know, and my mom would give me verbal suggestions, or she would like try to use one finger and put it on herself and show me. And eventually, clearly, I have clothes on today, so I figured out how to dress myself. And they would then put me, you know, in a high chair with my food, and they would say, you know, figure it out. And this did two really, really important things that I think everybody listening could adopt. I think the first thing that it programmed me to be was solution oriented. You know, I understood that problems were part of the journey, and that I'm not going to waste much energy on the problem itself, but I'm going to shift energy towards the solution. And one of the biggest patterns that holds most humans back is they're hyper focused on all the things that they don't want, and so their life is an accumulation of more of the things that they don't want. You don't get the life you have, you get the life you focus on. And so I started focusing on the solution, which in entrepreneurship, maybe that's why I'm so successful, is because I spend little time on problems, or I solve problems very well. But the second thing that would also benefit everybody listening is I developed an empowering relationship with failure. I think if you're not in an environment that promotes failure and cheers on failure, you live in this illusion of wanting to be on this perfect winning streak, and you never want to fall down. You never want to scrape yourself. And we miss that all the gold is in the adversity. All the gold is within the failure. And when you look at someone that's doing something incredible, they just failed more than you did. They were willing to put themselves out there. They were willing to create the content. They were willing to speak on stage. They were willing to ask the guy or girl out on a date. They were able to pitch the program 5 times and get rejected before they got their first yes. And so I had an empowering relationship with failure. And so for those that are listening, the question that we can spark to you is, what is your relationship with failure, and do you need to reevaluate that relationship with failure? So I think this was one defining moment or a season of my life that really cultivated and started the mindset for me to be not disabled or not challenged, whatever the word that you want to use.
Yeah, I love that how you frame, you know, because failure is obviously obstacle, right, for people, and that's on the mental side, right, impacting, and how we overcome that builds resilience, right? And it seems like your parents, first of all, has really played a significant role very early on to help you to figure things out and find those solutions by yourself, which is very nicely done by your parents, so kudos to them, right?
Agreed.
And then obviously being open and curious to experiment, explore, and do not drown yourself in this rabbit hole, right? Whenever something doesn't work, but keep on going, because as you say, success is built on a couple of those failures that we don't see, right? We just see actually the result, the success.
Of course.
But we forget that, you know, along the way, there had been so many times that actually things didn't work out.
100%. You know, I think as you grow up and you evolve, you realize if there's no struggle, there's no story. There's nothing relatable. Look at social media. People don't relate to a perfect life. And so I applaud myself and try to embody being most authentic and letting people know, like, money's down right now, or money's up right now, or I got money, I'm struggling with this, or I don't have this. And this is like, authenticity is the highest vibration. And so most people live in the desire for money and the desire for fame versus the desire for authenticity. And so, yeah, I believe authenticity is the highest vibration, and no one relates to a perfect life. And maybe you're listening right now and saying, well, I don't have no legs, one arm. Like, what is my story going to do? And the truth is, your ordinary story is extraordinary because it connects with ordinary people just like you. Meaning that how many people can relate right now listening? How many people can relate to having no legs but arm? Probably a very small percentage, or maybe none, right? That are listening. If I go climb Mount Everest, how many people can relate to climbing Mount Everest? No. And so these extraordinary stories are actually not the gold. The gold is within you being as human as possible. Right? I have to humanize myself because people think I'm this like thing, this like robot or this AI that's perfect and like somehow got some cheat codes. But ultimately, I struggled my whole life. And I was willing to persist through the season of suck until I was great at things. And so I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but no risk, no story, no struggle, no story. And when you're within the adversity, it makes the winning so much more enjoyable. It makes it so much of a celebration. If you came to this human experience and you knew every single time that you were going to bet on blackjack and you were going to win money, eventually you wouldn't want to play blackjack because you'd know exactly what the outcome is. And so we came to the human experience for the uncertainty. We came to the human experience for the insecurity and the rejection and the failure. And so what if your pain was actually your greatest gift that you can then help heal other people?
I love it. Somewhere in my life, I started to see it the same way because, we always, you say, have those stories when it's hard, when things do not go. And we are so much trapped also in this unconscious beliefs and biases and the whole autopilot that runs, as you mentioned, also shaped so early on. So I was wondering, what was that moment of switch for you that you started to turn it? Because I believe there has been a moment it was difficult, right? Until you figure out, it's also perception, is also some work within, right? But first you need to get to those first aha moments, turn it into gifts. So what were that for you?
Of course. Well, I believe humans will change for two reasons. They either change for pain or they change for pleasure. But typically humans will always run away from pain faster than they'll run towards pleasure. And so pain is leverage for us. So for those that are in pain right now, good, because eventually it'll hurt hard enough and then you'll change. But also I will challenge that because I believe at this level of evolution in my life, there is no right way. I really want to anchor that for y'all. Because when I first got into personal development and having mentors, I was like, well, if I don't do it this way, I'm going to fail. And the truth is, so many ways. Your way is the way, right? I'm just quite sick of teachers and experts saying like, this is the way and I have all the answers. It's like, no. And I used to be that version. There used to be a version of Nick where I was like, this is the only way you could be successful. And so you can change for pain, but I'd also challenge my own statement and say, why wait for pain to change? Why wait for pain to change? Can you change in a beautiful place, right? One of my pivotal moments was the pain of lack of connection or the pain of not being loved. And in my case, it was with females. And so by the time that I got into middle school and high school, dating is like a big deal and you're growing and you're becoming something. And I was, or at least my hallucination was that I was not loved or I wasn't attractive. Girls wouldn't date someone like me. And, these beliefs are created because of experiences, right? So when you have a negative experience, you then create a negative story. And if you share that story to yourself repeatedly, it becomes a belief. All a belief is a story that you've repeated over and over again. And so, for example, there was a time where I got made fun of by a girl. And because of that experience, I was like, maybe she's right. Maybe I am disgusting. Maybe I am unattractive. Maybe I'll never have a family. Maybe I shouldn't go to my junior prom, and maybe I shouldn't go to those dances, and maybe I should even try. And what's such a trip about the human experience is whatever you believe, the external world will mirror you.
Absolutely.
Don't miss it. Your brain is the best detective, and based on your beliefs, your brain will find the evidence, or it'll construe it or hallucinate the evidence to prove yourself right, because we love being right. So, for example, if I have the belief that I'm disgusting and girls don't like me, I can be in an airport and there could be a group of women that are laughing, and I think they're laughing at me. You ain't that important. People don't really care about you that much, but because that's my belief, I create my external world to prove myself right, and I live in suffering.
And this vicious circle, right, continues. There's even part of the brain, RAC, right, that is basically filtering and proving
reticular activating system, exactly. Right? It's the filter you see lens through.
Yes.
And so just think, if I have the belief that I'm unattractive in high school, I'm going to find evidence that I'm unattractive, right? That pain, and maybe thank God, thank the universe for that belief, because it helped me shift, but I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be valued. I wanted to be seen. I wanted connection. And the first way that I decided to get that was I was going to become an athlete. You know, I was like, oh, girls like athletes, you know, if I'll be an athlete. And I decided to choose the most savage sport of wrestling out of all of them because my older brother was a wrestler, which at the time that required me to amputate 5 inches of this arm off. And so this arm, 5 inches longer than it is now, and my bone was going faster than my skin, and I couldn't do physical activities with it. I was in so much pain that I would do whatever it take to be loved. So I told my parents, I was like, can we amputate my arm? They were like, if this is what you want, let's do it. At 16, I amputated my arm. 17, I became a wrestler. 18, I became the starting wrestler for my high school. And this was a pivotal moment because my identity elevated. Now I wasn't just Nick with no legs, one arm, but I was like, that's the guy, that's a wrestler guy. Ooh, you know, my identity upgraded. Girls started to like inside, me, right? But I started to have more confidence, right? I got brought into a community of brothers that were pushing me. I started to push myself physically and mentally, right? So I can break this down in the most nerdy way, but ultimately make it very simple. Me becoming a wrestler, I started pushing myself physically and mentally. That's going to make me feel better. I became an elevated identity. Now I'm an athlete and a wrestler. Identity elevates. I feel more confident. And community changed my life. You know, it's one thing to be alone, but it's another thing to be around other crazy people that think like you. Life will start to change. And so that was a pivotal moment for me where Nick started to build more confidence, more self-worth. And then there's a snowball effect starting to create content. We can go in all the
yourself differently, right?
Yeah.
You kind of shift. That is the shift inside what I kind of see when we are unlocking, you know, this when we're turning and shifting the beliefs actually, right? And growing, of course, in identity or elevate to the next level. This is some magical things happen, right? Because for me, I had several of these episodes in my own life, right? That's why I ask you the question, what were the first? Because before we come to the moment of aha, of awareness and now shifting further, there is this pain, and that happened also for me. I mean, obviously, we all have certain baggage from the childhood. In my case, I also totally recall what you say. I'm not loved, I'm not enough. We're typical narratives in my mind. I had an episode as well of health in a childhood which shaped that. And also today, you know, working with so many leaders, it doesn't need to be a traumatic experience that actually builds those beliefs that we are subconsciously and unaware actually running on and living our life in limitation, because that so much limit us with capabilities of what we can do. And sometimes we are dreaming about a different life, but we never kind of take a step towards that, right? Because we are so much trapped into that inner limitation by the past, right? And as you said, I totally agree and reckon that most people come to this place of pain. Something needs to happen. In my case, that has been actually, that was early 30s where I was challenged in leadership, right? So that where how it manifested, right? The symptoms of something needs to change. And I have a lot of leaders that are, you know, at very senior positions that are in that stage. So some moments, you know, either something in the work doesn't work, you know, you climb the ladder, you are in your beautiful role that you want, and it doesn't work. Or in relationships, right? The marriage, the partnerships or whatever, or health, right? Those are the typical symptoms I find. I don't know if you've seen others, but that people really, that shake people. And that's the moment where we start to question and seek for what's going really on beneath the surface.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're all little kids in adult bodies. And one of the things that has changed my life is when I'm dealing with someone who maybe is struggling or has limited thinking or is negative, I try to see that little broken boy or little broken girl in them. And not in the sense of broken that you need to be fixed, but someone who maybe didn't get all the love and they don't know how to love, or someone that was never taught how to communicate, or they were communicated negatively to, and they think that's how you're supposed to communicate people. So it's so hard, but I try to have compassion and empathy because it's their first time doing life too. And we're all just figuring it out. But you're right, with all those different areas, whether it's relationships, health, business, patterns bleed into all areas of life. And so if you have an aha in business, ask yourself, where else does it show up in my life? And then you'll find some more clues and more awareness and more golden nuggets, right? And what's really beautiful about this experience of life is we only get to use the tools when things don't go our way. It's like we develop all these strategies and these personal development tools, but if life was perfect, you don't get the exercise, the muscle. And so the moments of triggered, the moments of insecurity, the moments of inadequacy are your actually greatest gifts, because now you have an opportunity to go to work. And so what if we change the meaning behind being triggered, and it was more of like, oh, a gift. Let me do something with this. But watch out. And the reason why I say watch out is once you put the goggles on of awareness, you can never see life the same. You'll see it everywhere. Some of you right now in the podcast thought this was going to go a specific way, and now your brain is totally blown away because the uncertainty and the mystical and the magic happened. You thought this was going to, I already know this, or maybe I'm going to get some wisdom, and next thing you know, now you're thinking about your childhood, And that's the beauty of
that's actually what literature is about, and all these topics, right? And I smiled because when you said the goggles, I have on my vision board, as I do yearly, and I have a picture of miracle glasses. So my kind of, I want to embrace the life as miracles, actually, right?
Yes.
So that's, which glasses actually you want to choose is kind of very much resonating with what your story is about, right? It's like you can embrace the glass and beliefs, right? And narratives that life is to me, right? Life is happening. Why? And a victim mindset, as you've written in your book, right? Why this and why that? And it's so easily, of course, to imagine that in, let me say, where you come from, right? Versus, changing the glasses, right? And seeing everything as gift, as you mentioned, as miracle, as opportunity to actually grow, to strengthen, to discover. And then, so I love the goggles. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And in the most loving, direct way, I think people stay victim because it meets their needs. Everything that you do in life is to meet a need, right? So you can meet the need of connection in an empowering way, or you can meet the need in a disempowering way, right? And we're in Dubai, so this would never happen, but if we were in somewhere that, let's say America, and I pulled a gun on you and I put a gun to your head, we would be very deeply connected. True or false? We'd be very deeply connected.
Yeah.
You'd be the only one I'm focusing on, right? But I would meet the need of connection in a disempowering way, right? And so let me back up to like a not aggressive an example is people.
I was like, which connection are you talking about, Nick, here? Because not the one I would like.
So when people play victim or poor me, what do they get? They get connection. They get likes on Instagram and they get comments and poor you, right?
Validation,
and they reinforce your story. Poor you. And just think about me. Just think about the guy with no legs but arm. How easy it would be for me to play victim and to post sad stories online, and for all of you to comment and like and subscribe. And I feel so good about it. But victims don't sustain. It's not sustainable. And eventually you have to shift and saying, I'm going to take ownership of my life. And whatever is in my life is an accumulation of the decisions that I made. Right. And, the law of cause and effect. Most people understand this law, but they don't fully grasp it. And what I mean by that is most people use cause and effect to play victim. And how they do that, they say, well, the reason why I smoke is because my mom smokes. The reason why I'm overweight is because my whole family's overweight. Or the reason why I don't have money is because no one in my family's ever had money, so we just can't have money. And so you blame something for your effect.
Circumstances of others,
But the moment that you take ownership and say, this is all me, you go from cause and effect to causing the effect. You realize that you are the cause and the effect. You go from the passenger seat of life to the driver's seat of life. And so I think for those that are listening right now is the moment you just take ownership of everything, like, hey, if I don't like the way my body looks when I'm naked, that's my fault. If I don't like the relationships and they're toxic in my life, I'm putting up with them. If I don't like the way that I'm getting treated in my work environment, that's me, and I haven't stood up for it. I haven't found an environment that values me. And so my friends that are listening, I just say this in the most loving way, is you can change now.
Absolutely.
Like right now. Like you can literally start embodying the version of yourself that you want to be right now. And I'm just so passionate about it because I have less than you. For those that are listening, like I literally have less than you, but I have more. How does that work? It's the psychology, it's the mindset, it's the belief, it's the goggles. Absolutely. We need to change some goggles.
I think at this moment, the listeners are like digesting, okay, the goggles come back, changing the lenses. And totally, of course, reckon that, I usually say the outer reality is actually a reflection of our inside.
Yes.
That's how important that work is, right? That's how 80% of success come from and all of that. So if well, whoever's listening today, you know, you haven't started yet your inner journey. That's definitely a call to action to start and look inside. Put these goggles on. And while you were sharing, the question that dropped was this episode of acceptance and self-love.
Yes.
Because this is also so important for leadership. This is obviously a podcast where a lot of leaders in business are listening to. And in part of leadership, that's what we also need to actually embrace more and more. The acceptance, the self-love, self-care, and boundaries and all of that. But it has different dimensions. I was wondering what helped you with that aspect, because I can only imagine that has been a journey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to share, to give context to the audience, that me sitting here at 28 with like a ton of success and cool followers and accolades, all of that was built because I've never felt enough. And so I was on this massive path of like, well, if I become a millionaire, will they love me then? If I hit this amount of followers, like maybe then I'll be loved. Maybe then I'll be enough. And it wasn't until recent that I realized that nothing in the external world will fill the internal hole. And so for those that are listening right now, my hallucination is that some of your language to yourself is like, when I get the car, then I'll be successful. Or when I get the house, then my dad will be proud of me. And the truth is that when that is your life or your model of the world, you give the key to your beautiful state to someone else or something else. And so I just wanted to share that because I didn't believe it when I had no money. When my rich friends would be like, money doesn't solve all your problems, I'd be like, great, give me your money. Or you're only going to like the Lamborghini for a couple of weeks. Okay, let me have your Lamborghini. Like I didn't understand it. Or Nick, all money's not good money. And then you realize when you make money that some things are just not worth your energy or it's not in alignment, right? So you learn these things as you go. So for me, I've now realized that self-worth comes from me following through on what I think is important and creating success rules that are tangible. And what I mean by that is most people have unsustainable success rules. For example, I'll give you an example. A man stands up in a room. He's very, very wealthy, billions of dollars. And we say to him, sir, would you believe that you're successful? And he says, no. And everybody looks around and says, well, this guy's way richer than me. What do you mean you're not successful? And you ask him, well, sir, what do you need to do in order to become successful? And he says, well, I have 3 daughters and they need to be happy all the time. What are the percentages that 3 women, 3 daughters are going to be happy all the time? It's unsustainable. And so that man could have the most incredible business, the most incredible family, but because he's create an unsustainable success rule, he'll never experience the emotion that he wants to feel. And so we have to create sustainable success rules. And I'll give you very simple examples. For me, every time I move my body, I feel successful. Every time I drink the water versus the soda, I feel healthy. Every time I try to bless someone, I feel like I'm on purpose. We rob ourselves of the feeling when we can feel it now. And if we can start embodying and programming the feeling now, you'll attract everything that you want anyway. You'll realize that when you get the things, it won't even give you the feeling that you wanted in the first place. And so to not go too deep and scare everyone, is self-worth and confidence comes from you knowing that you don't lie to yourself. That when you make a promise, the promise gets executed on. When you say you're going to show up, you show up. But when you break promises to yourself, unconsciously, you diminish the relationship you have with yourself. And when you break one promise, it's easier to break 5 and 10. And then the cycle repeats. And then you get to a point where you don't even believe yourself. You're like, why doesn't anyone believe me when I say I'm gonna start that business? Because it's been 12 years, homie. It's been 12 years. It's been 5 years. You're the girl who cried breakthrough. You're the man who cried weight loss, right? And so I know I'm a bit intense and passionate, but if the man with no legs of an arm, who hated himself, who thought he was the most disgusting thing in the world, can do the internal work to have an incredible relationship, there's hope. There's hope for you. But it comes to, like you said, internal work. And one of the greatest spiritual philosophies that I've learned is that the most important work that Nick needs to be doing is in the privacy of his own heart and not in anyone else's. As teachers and experts and guru, whatever you want to call us, we think we need to change. I don't need to change anybody. I need to change myself. I need to upgrade myself. And then I need to speak with no expectation that you're going to take action, that you will find your blessing on your own time. And so all of these micro shifts have built self-worth and confidence in me. And then also on the nerdy business side of things, the more you master a skill, the more confident you are. The only reason why I'm so certain with speaking is because I speak more than all of you. I exercise the muscle. And guess what? You can go on YouTube, type in my name, go scroll down to 2014 and see how terrible I was at speaking. I was not good. And so also in business and in becoming more valuable, competency breeds confidence. So the more you learn, the more you earn. The more you learn, the more certain you are and more confident you are. That's my long-winded answer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful how you merge the two, right? Because the important message here is we are actually everything having inside of ourselves, right?
Nothing's missing.
So yes, we're trying to fill that void, right? And build the dependency, as you mentioned, like if I have this, that will happen and so on. We are in this chasing game. I never feel satisfied and successful and all of that. Totally reckon. It had been part of my life too, obviously. And it's until the moment that we bring the power back to ourselves, right? And the gratitude back and the love back and everything that we want is, as you said, we actually attract that more and easily into our lives because we give it as well, right? So we don't depend on the external successes, on the numbers, on the things. This is nice to have and we create that anyways, but they don't make us dependent on how we feel inside.
Yes.
Which is what happiness is. Right?
Yes.
Like the second, of course, yes, there is I think a sentence that you don't wait to feel confident to take action. The confidence is a result of taking action. Which is what you beautifully demonstrated with speaking, right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to check your 2014.
Please. I put it out there for the world. It's not so pretty. Got the message across, right? But that's another thing too. When for the leaders that are listening is, are you willing to suck long enough to be great at something? I mean, check this out. How many of you listening right now still experience imposter syndrome? Now, my second question to you is, who are you to think that you can skip that season? Who are you to think that you can skip the season of awkward? You got to go through the season of awkward until you're great at something. And everything, every new skill, every new dynamic. Podcasting, total different beast, right? Selling, total different beast. Dating, total different beast, right? But who are you to think that you can skip the season of suck? You can't.
Part of the journey.
Part of the journey.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing and what I think listeners are getting into is, okay, there is this importance of going inwards on reevaluating and looking at, what beliefs shaped you and how you can choose a different ones, right? You mentioned this aspect of, putting the glasses on. I love it, right? Into that. Also bringing back to yourself, right? So you can actually shift in an instant. You don't need years of the work. Actually, it's the practice will make it faster. That's for sure.
Yes.
Taking actions, also you mentioned. What are the hardest, maybe that's curious to hear, what are the hardest moments when you look back in that journey that got you from where you were to where you're here? And maybe what was the wisdom there and what did you learn?
I think one of the greatest things that I've learned through some hardship is that there's no justified resentment. So many people have been burned and rejected and cheated on and scammed, and they hold resentment towards an individual that doesn't even care about them or doesn't even think about them. And the only thing that they are doing is blocking their energy to source, to flow, right? So when a snake bites you, you don't die from the actual bite. You die from the venom that you allow to run through your veins. And I think one of the greatest tools that I've learned, that I've had to go through, is anytime that I have resentment towards someone, if I don't deal with that, I know there's an energy block. Maybe I'm blocking blessings from happening into my life. Maybe I'm blocking flow. Maybe I'm blocking downloads from God, my creator, whatever it may be. And so there's a concept that changed my life called blaming elegantly or blaming effectively. And what that means is if you're going to blame someone for all the bad they did in your life, you have to blame them for all the good as well. It's not a one-way street. And so for those that are listening right now, I know that there's a person that came to your head that after this podcast, you should go write a message to. You should call. You should send an email. If you're old school, write a letter, take a pigeon and have it fly into their house. I don't think they do that anymore. And the letter is not for them, it's for you. Hey, I may not agree with this. I may not agree with the past. You don't even need to go into the negative. I may not agree with the past, but I did want to thank you for this. And I became this because of you. And I gained this insight because of you. And I'm a better man. And I became an entrepreneur. And you started me this. Go on a rant of all the great things. Because when you go on a rant of all the great things, you neutralize the emotionally charged event. And that event is no longer has shackles over you. You're no longer a victim to that event, and you blocked up. It's like a kink in a hose. Most of you've got kinks in the hose, so you can't flow and get downloads from God, the Creator. And so there's no justified resentment was a massive one that I've learned. And another one that I've learned over my experience in life is that the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Mm-hmm. Meaning, just because we came out of the same mother doesn't mean we're family. Doesn't mean that we're in alignment. That's not talking about me just in particular. That's talking about the patterns that I see, is that most people who have really incredible ideas share it with family that destroys them. They share it with friends that throw stones at their ideas. And if you really want to have a terrible life, share your big goals with people who have small minds. And so just think of how much beauty is missed in the world, how much creation and co-creation and expression is not given to the world because someone's family told them they were an idiot. Or someone's family told them, like, what's your plan B? That doesn't make sense, because they can't understand your vision and that seed that your Creator has planted within you. And because they haven't achieved anything like that, they project their beliefs onto you. And so the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. My intention and hope for everybody listening is that they find a deep, meaningful brotherhood, or they find a deep, meaningful sisterhood with people who hold you accountable, who love on you, who see you, but also push you, and they're excited for your ideas. Life will change just within that. And that's super rare currency, but once you find it, please don't let it go. It's the most valuable thing.
Yeah, I think I again reckon the importance of ecosystem, I call it, right? Because, yeah, sometimes that's the people around us that are draining us or making us feel small, or block the ideas because they are not supported because of exactly what you said, right?
Yes.
So they are living in limitation and projecting a limitation on us. So that's how important it is. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's the hardest decision to make, is to cut or to take a distance from people that are very close from relationship or past or family. And you need that. I have now in my mind coming a lot of different, even clients, that needed to do that in order to first, strengthen from inside, because the energy is zapped, right? The toxicity and all of that could also be. And the first one is really nicely connected with forgiveness, right? And also gratitude for, because of them, you grew.
Yes.
Or because of people that we find on our path and we feel like, oh, if only I could have life without him or her. Right? They are actually teachers. Because usually after match, right, when we look back, we see, oh, that was actually the greatest gift. That person actually made me feel either more resilient, more strong, or discover, right, something. Like I clearly have one person now in my mind as well. Thanks to him, for me, that was an incident of being actually fired, right, after a long service. And that was a very hard one, but that was the greatest gift. Pivotal shift for me, one of them, right? And we need those people along the way. So actually, great recommendation to write a letter, even if the letter doesn't reach them.
Yeah, it's not for them. Soul. It's for you. It's for you, right? And and the other one, it came back to me, was you have to constantly reject other people's projections and beliefs. When I moved to Dubai 8 months ago, they'd be like, well, Dubai, reject. I wouldn't say it out loud, but I'm like, that's not mine to hold. You know how powerful that is? If I adopted people's limited thinking about this place, I would not be at the level I'm at. Oh, there's no good girls here. That's your belief. And because it's your belief, you'll keep finding not good girls here. Or businesses don't really do that. Reject. Oh, they reject. You're constantly rejecting. And you can literally say, we learn this in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is like subconscious reject that. It's not mine.
Yeah.
Please don't take that one, because you're subconscious always going and going. And so I think that's the biggest one. I think it was Jim Rohn that said, stand guard to the door of your mind.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly rejecting beliefs. We don't need to tell them that their beliefs are limited, but I just don't adopt it.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
And when you think about it, it's so simple that, after years of, discovering self and stuff, you actually can put it into simplicity. But it's still a journey, right? Between, knowing that and embodying that, there is a journey.
Of course.
But in a simplicity, yes, you can, it's like a program. You run on a software. So you can swap the beliefs, you can change. And the moment you come to the level that you can play with that and elicit also which one the narratives that are blocking you, right? And which one you actually want to take and create your own world. because one of the coaches, I love how she always presented. It's like, first of all, you can choose your beliefs totally, but also is that your reality is created twice, right? As also Robin Sharma said, right? It's once in your mind and once in reality. So when you start to allow yourself to actually go into this delusional thinking, some people would say, right, visionary thinking and dreaming, where a lot of current beliefs and identity that you hold is going to be challenged. But if you anchor yourself that that's actually what's calling you is the truth, that's desire is meant for you, right? That life, that impact, that relationships, everything, right? And when you actually realize that this is the path you can follow, and that means you can condition your mind, right? Because it's basically swapping your beliefs and obviously with NLP and other practices, just basically reprogramming yourself. And that is, as you said before, shape completely the life outside. So that's how you create you are a creator and co-creator of reality, actually.
Of course. What a trip.
Yes.
What a trip. And it's a journey of remembering. I believe we're all here to walk ourselves back down to wholeness, to who we really are. They shot you into this world and gave you some silly pills where you forget that you are it. You're the creator. And if you don't understand it in this lifetime, maybe we'll come back the next one and learn the lesson. Inshallah.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one. And that's why it's never about changing, right? Transformation is actually about expanding and becoming who you truly are, right?
Of course.
Discovering that.
Yeah. Discovering more about yourself and getting curious and observing and going down the rabbit holes and seeing why that made you angry or why that made you insecure. Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful journey. But I also think there's a part of me that sometimes I just want to enjoy this version of myself. Like, let me settle in. Let me at least settle in before I try to push to the next version. So I think it's personal development is like a curse and a blessing, because even as teachers, it's like, I can teach you, but then I got to go get better to teach you more. And then I got to go get better to teach you more. And then does this ever end? It never ends. So sometimes I just want to stay this version of Nick for a little bit and settle in.
Well, you can, completely regulate it, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes, I would say it's not only a drug, it becomes a purpose, right? Because it's like, his life is a school of greatness. Even there is a podcast, I think, named like that. Exactly. Yeah. And when you go through the lens, through your life, through the lens of, learning, embracing, growing, there'll be, of course, always something to embrace again. And I think that's the gratitude for who you are. And you don't need to change yourself to, be a greater version of yourself. You already are.
Yeah.
And it's just what that awesome version of you can do more and bring more in terms of, impact or contribution to the world, right?
100%.
What is extraordinary leadership for you? Since we are in a podcast that's called Extraordinary Leadership, what does that mean for you?
A few things. I think the first thing, what extraordinary leadership means to me is leading from the front. I will never ask my people to do something that I've never done myself. When I teach students, I'll never put you through an exercise that I've never put myself through. Right. And so I think extraordinary leadership is leading from the front. I also think extraordinary leadership is living in the third dimension of relationships. And so there's 3 dimensions of a relationship. The first dimension of a relationship is it's all about me. We all know someone like that. The second dimension of a relationship is where also most leaders stay, which is I scratch your back, you scratch mine, meaning it has to be even and it becomes transactional. A lot of leaders are solely transactional. But the highest level of relationship and leadership is the third dimension, which states your needs are my needs. And the moment that I meet your needs, my needs get met as well. And I think as leaders, if we can put our people's needs first and create environments and solutions and opportunities and resources that meet the needs of our people, they will fall in love with your leadership. And so I think extraordinary leadership is living in the third dimension. And then last but not least, you can only heal your people as much as you're willing to heal yourself. And so if you try to preach healing and preach growth, but you're not doing any growth, you're a false leader. They can feel it. And you wonder why no one listens to you. And so lead from the front, do the work on yourself so you can become an offering and give more, and always identify your people's needs and your clients' needs and how you can over deliver on those. That's extraordinary leadership to me.
Beautiful. I love it. I love that aspects of caring for people that's human-centric lens, which we need more of in the world. When I'm thinking, of course, of fantastic evolution of AI, which is great, right? It helps us. And at the same time, it's a consciousness evolution and humanity evolution that is happening in parallel that screams for more, right?
Yes.
And that's where focus on human beings, on their needs and so on, fall into that category. And the second is just interconnected. right? You can't be a better leader if you don't grow yourself from within and evolve to that purer version of who you're really meant to be, because that's the way you are going to transform any organization and team to greatness, right?
Of course.
And you speak about peak performance, so I guess that's also one of the things that you would probably see is fueling that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you had mentioned, as a leader, be open. You don't know it all. And I think a true master is someone who's able to 1 minute be in the master seat and then go back to student. I never want to believe that I've mastered something. I never want to, I may walk around and be like, I'm the best speaker in the world, my delusional optimistic beliefs, which helps me. But I'm always learning. I'm always studying. I'm never slowing down. If you're going to try to catch me, I'm running. I don't got legs, but I'm running. I'm going as fast as I can, right? But be open. The most dangerous information is the information that you don't know. And the biggest well trap that you can fall into is thinking you're done, thinking you know it all, thinking you're above people. I want to be with my people, not above them.
So true. I think that probably food for thought and reflection for listeners, because, the higher you go, it's so easy to fall into the trap in any profession, right? But let's say if we stay in context of leadership, right? There's a lot of work that goes into ascending into the next levels, right? That leaders go. It's a hard mission as well. I mean, it's not an easy job to be a leader, and especially if you are leading a big organization in turbulent times, challenging times, as for example now, it's not an easy job.
Yes.
And yes, on one side, you can get into this blind spot of you've done it all, you've seen it all, you've been everywhere, you're an expert, and you're just here to tell others how they need to do, right? And that's the biggest pitfall that a leader can actually fall into.
100%.
Yeah.
Come back down into the fire with the people. I think we'll end with this, right, is like there's a percentage of the world that's in fire, and they'll do whatever they can to cool off. And they finally reach that pain threshold, and then they move into the water. And so now they're out of the pain, but you're not in fully control of the water. So you're in this like surrender, finding yourself. And then maybe you find yourself, and then finally your feet, if you got them, are on the land, and you settle in, you get more grounded, you start building your business, you start building people, and then you get some success, and now you're in the air. But if you spend too much time in the air, you forget what it's like to be in the fire. And that's where most people are. So come back down with your people, and they'll love you more.
Yeah, some wisdom there. So maybe towards the end, Nick, thinking about the times that we are in and, possible challenges that leaders are in, and you have done a lot and you help people to overcome challenges and navigate their mind and resilience. Those are the topics, peak performance. So I was just thinking, what would be the message for listeners, for leaders who are leading in these challenging times?
Good. That's your message. Good. The problems are gifts once you learn from them. The biggest problem leaders have is they think they shouldn't have problems. And so the more that you welcome and embrace and change the meaning of problems as opportunities and gifts, you will approach them in a more enthusiastic manner, which will be more healing, which will be less stressful, and you'll look forward to them. And as leaders, I can assure you, the bigger problem you solve, the more money you make, the more people you impact. And so if you ain't got problems, you better pray for some problems. And then when you get some problems, you better be grateful for the problems.
Yeah, I like this lens, right? Again,
the goggles.
Is it life happening for you?
Exactly, or to you, right?
How can you turn that into opportunity and gift, right? Cool. Oh, that has been a wonderful conversation with so many episodes of wisdom going in different directions. I think that it's worth listening at least once, if not twice or more times, because you will each time probably find some newness.
Of course.
As we grow and evolve. So many messages. Is there any last message that you would like to leave listeners with, Nick?
Yeah, I think we mentioned it earlier, but nothing's missing. I'm sorry that you've been programmed in a world that people told you were missing, you were broken, you didn't have the answers. But the truth is that a healer isn't someone that you go to for healing. A healer is someone that triggers a part of you to heal yourself. You've always had the power. You've always had the answers. You just need help accessing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very wise words. Nick, it was a really immense pleasure to have this conversation, and I'm going to listen to it for sure. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for being as awesome as you are and inspiring for the world.
Thank you. Thanks for your light, your wisdom, and the platform that I got to be on. I'm really honored.
Thank you.
See you soon.
See you soon. And for all the listeners, I hope you take away a lot for yourself and share with us what really are the takeaways and what this episode evoked in you. And remember, extraordinary leadership always starts within.